Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nails and Beauty Talk. I am your host, Asia the Bird. To have a returning guest with me today, he has a brand new book out called Reparations, Style, and Soul, and he's here to talk all about it and much more. Please welcome fashion stylist and fashion journalist, James R. Sanders. Hello, James, and welcome back to the show.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Asia the Bird. And I'm super excited to be here. I'm trying to contain my excitement, honey. I don't want to act like too much of a bird myself. And yeah, let's see how this goes. We're here to keep it real, keep it a beam, and that's that on that.
Yes, indeed. So I want to kick off this interview by asking, what inspired you to write your brand new book? Because some may view it as provocative. Like, was that your intention? Tell us about that.
So yeah, I wrote Reparations, Style, and Soul. Boom.
Mhm.
And I decided to call it that because, well, it is provocative, the title, okay? Reparations is a buzzword, but you know, it's all about the idea of payback and
Right.
restitution. And I feel like in fashion, our people, Black people, don't get what they deserve. And what they deserve is credit and
Right.
credit for their achievements, credit for
Hmm.
starting things, credit for trends, credit for design, credit for innovations. And so that's where the title came from. Um, reparations is something that's currently being debated inside and outside of politics. It's the discussion in salons, it's the discussion in classrooms, it's the discussion in barbershops, it's even the
Right.
discussion in church houses, in masjids, in temples, even, right? And we
Right.
don't know whether or not it's going to come. It's being debated and explored in California, in North Carolina, South Carolina. I believe some states have actually adopted
Hmm.
reparations for ancestors of the transatlantic slave trade specifically.
Right.
We know other races have gotten reparations, and there were no debates for that. But when it comes to our community, this idea of getting what was owed to them for crimes
Right.
and America's original sin of slavery towards the Black community
Right.
seems to always be this challenge. I
Mm.
want to uh, talk about that in fashion, and so that's where the idea for the
Mhm.
title came from.
Mm. Yeah, that's really, really, very, very informative. But I definitely want to switch gears and talk about like you're from a culture of coolness and a high regard for fashion, that's used to promote like status and individuality, but also too at the same time they find themselves at the consumer level, and these brands, the industry depends on, the consumers, for its survival. So in regards to, us as a people, is it the lack of know-how? Is it conspiracy? Is it the old saying where it's like we're incapable of doing anything together now that is stopping Black people from playing a major role in an industry that depends on them?
So that's an excellent question, but the answer is not hard to come to. I
Mhm.
definitely don't think that it's a lack of know how. I never think that it's a lack of
Mhm.
know how. And I think that it's a stereotype to think that, or the idea of it's a lack of unity is a
Right.
stereotype as well.
Right.
I think it's a cop out to think that we have issues with sticking together. I think that the deaths of George Floyd and the deaths of Breonna Taylor proved during the summer of 2020 that we have no problem sticking together. I think that the voter turnout in 2008 and then in 2012 proved that we have no problem sticking together. When the Black community was the number one voting demographic
Mhm.
in both elections and got Barack Obama and Vice President at the time, Joe Biden nominated and then elected into office as president and vice president of the United States of America. So we're not going to um, say that. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it often frustrates me when that narrative gets pushed. What it is a systematic or a system set on racism, which is systematic, and
Right.
it's based on a power structure.
Mhm.
And so that's why we cannot say that Black people are racist or are capable of racism. They may be capable of prejudice and may have prejudices or prejudice, but are not
Right.
racist, because in order to be racist, you must have the power to yield such, right? And since
Right.
racism is set on
Mhm.
a or based on a power structure,
Mhm.
and is systematic, one would have to have power in that
Mhm.
system to yield such actions. And so, where Black people are concerned, to speak to your question, where the fashion
Mhm.
industry is concerned in terms of their lack of power and their lack
Mhm.
of ability to do things, that
Right.
has to do with racism based on a power structure that is set on systematic racism. It has nothing to do with our lack of sticking together, which is a narrative that has been put out by the media and also by those in power to
Mhm.
continue to manipulate us. And it of course is has nothing to do with our lack of know-how. That also too is a false narrative that is used to control us, because if we think we don't know how to do something, we will start to believe that lie as well. And if you can control someone's mind, you don't have to worry about controlling any other aspect of them.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely want to go ahead and talk about Ann Lowe and the designers that have been under celebrated, because I just watched a documentary, based off of Ann Lowe and what she was going through as a designer, being, under, credited for her work, especially the dress that she made for Jackie Kennedy, but also how, other outlets were not giving her credit, and she had to, like she was going through these, trials and tribulations, just trying to stay in an industry where she, really loved, which is the fashion industry. So can you tell us more about Ann Lowe, but also other designers that have been under celebrated in the fashion industry?
So, Lowe comes from an era where designers, especially Black designers, did not get their just due.
Hmm.
Ann Lowe was a brilliant designer, and as you mentioned, of course, her claim to fame, and I say that sparingly because she did not, as you said, get the credit that she deserved, but she's most known for
Hmm.
designing the gorgeous gown that Jacqueline Kennedy, wore when she married John F. Kennedy. And
Right.
it became important because Jackie Kennedy was a fashion icon.
Right.
Next to Michelle Obama, there was no first lady who made
Hmm.
more of a fashion impact. And
Right.
so to design the dress that you would marry probably the most prolific
Hmm.
president next to Barack Obama uh,
Right.
in being the probably next to Michelle Obama, the most fashionable uh,
Hmm.
first lady in history, next to the pillbox that Halston did for,
Right.
for Jackie Kennedy, there was
Hmm.
no bigger garment that she was known for. And
Hmm.
so you see, it was really an iconic moment.
Right.
But you see, we have to analyze why these things happen. So the important question is not who she was and the credit that she didn't get. The question is, why wasn't she credited with that? And I just answered it. The reason why she wasn't credited with that is because of how big the moment was and what Jackie Onassis, who, she passed away as Jackie Onassis, and who she married at the time, what that would have represented. And so, if that would have been a Chanel gown, or if that would have been a Halston gown, or if that would have
Mhm.
been a um, Donna Karen, who I don't think would have came along until after the 80s. So more appropriately, a maybe Gucci or Saint Laurent or
Right.
Lagerfeld for someone else at the time gown, then it would have made more sense because they were European and white designers. But you see,
Mhm.
she was African American. So that
Right.
right there was the
Mhm.
problem. That was why she didn't get the acknowledgement that she deserved. It was simply her skin color. And that was
Mhm.
also the reason why Zelda Wynn Valdez, who designed the okay,
Mhm.
iconic Playboy uniforms and outfits, those Playboy bunny
Mhm.
outfits that everybody wears for Halloween. And when I
Right.
say everybody, I do mean everybody. And when all these countless biopics are produced about Playboy, and Zelda Wynn is never acknowledged in
Mhm.
any of them, because when you're black, it's about the talent, but it's never about the color.
Mhm.
It's never about the person. And that's because it can't be. And
Mhm.
that is the problem in itself. That is the issue. Oftentimes, being black is a double edged sword because being black is beautiful. Being
Right.
black is everything. And I wouldn't have it any
Mhm.
other way, honey. Let's be clear about that. But
Right.
you see, in that, I must also deal, okay, with the
Mhm.
fact that it is a beautiful struggle if you want to
Mhm.
work in fashion, okay? Unless my job is to be black, I'm going to have a problem no matter where I go. But in fashion, a field that is visual, back
Mhm.
during the times of Anne Lowe
Right.
and Zelda Wynn, you were going to
Mhm.
have even more of a problem. Kennedy hadn't even taken office yet. She was designing a dress for someone who wasn't even the president at the time. That
Mhm.
meant that the Voting Rights Act was still, that was getting ready to come to fruition. Okay. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, they were all still alive. So all the things that they were fighting for had not even come to fruition yet. You must
Mhm.
understand the time that we were dealing with. So her getting an acknowledgement for a dress, oh no, honey, that was small. We were still trying to deal with voting. Stacey Abrams today is trying to deal with voter suppression in
Mhm.
2023. Okay? We're trying to deal with voting laws on paper today. When
Mhm.
Ann Lowe was designing a wedding dress for a society girl named Jacqueline Kennedy, we were trying to deal with water hoses and dogs and people getting lynched still.
Mhm.
And Emmett Till, which was just a few years before they got married. Might have been after they got married. The timing for me is a little gray. So we have to put that into perspective. There was not
Right.
going to be any credit over a gown. We were dealing with other things.
Mhm. Yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely want to talk about the man behind this quote, and I'm going to read it, aloud. People have said many bad things about me. They used to call me Queen Kong. I was like an ape. I was a gay ape Queen Kong, but I had to move on. So this talks about the treatment that Andre Natali endured, and this is a quote by him that of what he said of the treatment that he endured being in the fashion industry. What can you add concerning his life struggle, just trying to, make it and survive and, still maintain being in the fashion industry?
So Andre Leon Talley is Andre Leon Talley, is a cautionary tale.
Mhm.
And that's how I would sum up Andre Leon Talley in a
Mhm.
nutshell. He is
Mhm.
a cautionary tale. Um,
Mhm.
you know, all of the advances that he has, he crawled so that Edward Eniful could walk,
Right.
and Samira Nasir.
Right.
And, I have mixed feelings about him, which is why I'm very precocious about the things that I'm saying right now in Serendipitous. Because on one hand, I want to take a hard line and say Andre didn't help Black people who were at Condé Nast, and he should have. And Andre, wasn't as militant as he should have been. And Andre should never have trusted the white people. And Andre should have been better. And why didn't he do this? And why didn't he do that? And
Right.
but after reading the Chiffon Trenches and then also getting the Audible and listening to the words that he wrote in his voice, I was blessed to grasp the
Mhm.
pain of him reliving these moments. And I was familiar with that quote. It's haunting. And it's haunting because it allowed me to realize what he went through during a time where if you spoke up, you would die.
Mhm.
We're not talking about 2023, 2022. We're talking about the 60s and the 70s.
Right.
And one thing we have to be very clear about, and this is something that fashion does not want you to talk about, and I talk about it in my book. Ooh, in my book, there we go, is that fashion is not as accepting, it's not as diverse, and it's
Right.
not as open as they would have you think. And let's be clear, it never was. It never
Mhm.
was. And anybody that tells you that it was, they were on drugs. And in the 70s, people did a lot of drugs. Andre is
Mhm.
telling you in surviving the Chiffon trenches that it wasn't. He's telling you through stories what he went through.
Mhm.
Okay? When you're out and ousted from your livelihood and from all that you know, and you have nothing to lose because you've lost everything, it becomes easier to tell the truth. Because
Mhm.
at that point, what do you have to lose? You've
Right.
lost
Exactly.
everything. And
Mhm.
that is what happens with surviving the Chiffon trenches. If that's the title, what is it? Chiffon trenches, something along
Mhm.
those lines, excuse
Yeah,
me.
the chiffon trenches.
Thank you. And so that quote speaks to how he had become known when he was in Paris, I believe.
Right.
And he was working as the Paris bureau chief for either Vanity Fair or W Magazine. Maybe it was Women's Wear Daily, one of the three.
Mhm.
And, being the only Black person in the room is incredibly hard. And it
Right.
puts a lot of pressure on you. So
Mhm.
you see, him being present
Mhm.
sometimes is a revolutionary act in itself. I
Right.
had to learn to give him grace in that and to say, even though I never met him, thank you, and to honor him for that because it had to have been incredibly hard
Mhm.
to be called those things to your face by people who felt like there was no consequence and that you could treat him any kind of way. And who felt like it was a turn on to intimidate someone who had his stature, you know, and size. You know,
Mhm.
we call it buck breaking. That's
Right.
essentially what it is, you know,
Right.
and and the conversation we're having now is essentially what I talk about in the first essay in my book, Fashion's Negro Problem, where I'm bringing together Black history and fashion history because, you know, people think the two have nothing to do with each other. And when I was in college and I would write these things, people would say, well, I'm tired of talking about Black history. I'm tired of it's so angry. Why don't you write about dresses? We love when you talk about Dior. We love when you talk about Chanel. We love when you talk about Gucci. Why don't you? Because this is so angry. Why are you? And people think that there's no place for the two. And that's when I
Right.
realized that I had a niche and a unique perspective. But I digress. Andre's quote speaks to his own perspective that was very unique. His presence was a revolutionary act. His presence was militant blackness. His presence was Black history. And we really have to acknowledge that. I think
Mhm.
that he doesn't get
Agree.
enough grace for being the only one and what that meant and what he had to endure so that we don't have to. We are militant now. We have bad attitudes now. We suck our teeth and roll our eyes now. We fight at the drop of a hat now because of
Mhm.
all that he endured. And if not for him, there would be no bad attitude at James. And
Mhm.
that's just that.
Mhm. Yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely want to go ahead and talk about a quote from your book because you mentioned, you spoke of Southern experiences relating to Anjan Talley, and a quote saying, "I had to be sure not to hurt Karen's feelings because white tears could lead to black bullets." Can you tell us some of the situations you found yourself in relating with the experiences of Anjan Talley?
100%. There's a story in my book. It's called Fashion's Black Bottom. And
Mhm.
I wrote it as an open letter to my daughter. Now, I have no daughter, but I imagine if I have children, I'll have a daughter with a nasty attitude and a roll of an eye and a suck of a teeth and all of this. And I imagine that she'll probably want to get into fashion because that's what her dad does. Um, you know, children often, sometimes, most times, do what their parent want to do, what their parents do. So, in the
Mhm.
story, I imagined that she had gotten an internship and I was trying to talk her out of it. And through that, I was sharing a real life experience I had working at one of the top fashion brands in the world as a market stylist during Market Week. Now, for those of you who don't know, Market Week is takes place a few weeks, maybe a month
Mhm.
after Fashion Week, and it's when
Mhm.
all of the buyers come to the ateliers and
Mhm.
they view the collections that they saw on the runways up
Right.
close and personal, and they
Mhm.
buy, they make orders.
Mhm.
Now, it is the job of a market stylist to dress the fit models who are very different than the runway models because the fit models are normally girls who are regular size. They
Right.
are hired specifically because they look like the average customer that you would see at a Bergdorf Goodman's, a Neiman Marcus, a Net-a-Porter, and
Mhm.
you know, a Lord and Taylor, a Macy's. So
Mhm.
I was hired to style the fit models and to do
Mhm.
merchandising for a very high end European brand.
Right.
And I was the only male there during Market Week. the only guy, and I was one of two black people. Um, there was a black girl there. Her name was Ashley. She and I, we still
Mhm.
keep in touch. Ashley's my homegirl. Shout out to Ashley. What's up, Ashley? Anyway, I said I wasn't gonna act like a bird Asian, but no,
That's
Ashley,
good.
that's my girl. You know, what's up, Ashley? But anyway, we were there and we always got paired together because we
Mhm.
were black. Luckily, we liked each other. And one day we were sent downstairs to go get hangers.
Mhm.
Why they needed two people to go get hangers, we still to this day do not know.
Mhm.
We get on the elevator, we
Mhm.
go downstairs to go get the hangers. We stop in the lobby. We don't know why the elevator stopped in the lobby. This white woman who works for the brand on a regular basis said, "Where are you two going?" We said, "We're going to the basement to get the hangers." She said,
Mhm.
"Oh, to the basement? That's where you belong. You're always going to belong down in the bottom in the basement. So go down to the bottom where you belong." And
Mm.
I said, "That's not what Harriet Tubman died for." And the elevator doors closed as I said that, and her mouth was like, oh, like she just couldn't believe it. And I couldn't. So Ashley and I were like, "Did this ugly bitch just say, like, what?
Right.
Like, we were starting to go off. So we
Right.
were talking about it all day, and we was
Mhm.
mad. So later on that day, the ugly white girl named Bianca. That's her name, Bianca. What's up, Bianca? If you ever see this, what's up? Anyway, Bianca with her ugly self came upstairs and said, "Oh, James, Ashley, you know I was just playing when I said that you belonged in the bottom, right?" And we just looked at her. Because how
Mhm.
dare you tell us that we're going to always be in the bottom? Who do you think you are?
Mhm.
You don't know me.
Mm.
I'm younger. I'm older than you, little girl. You don't know me to be telling me I'm always going to be in the bottom. You thought you could stun me, but you don't even know me like that, really. I have a
Mhm.
master's degree. You don't even have a bachelor's degree. Like, you could never. You could never, but I'm gonna tell you something. This is speaks to that quote that you brought up. And so now I'm getting to your quote or my quote, but your question and the
Mhm.
Andre Lee. I'm bringing it full circle. So the next day, Bianca is working with us because we all were working together. It was market week, and the buyers were there from Bergdorf's and Neiman. Honey, you have to get the book to read the story.
Mhm.
But I noticed Bianca was acting real like down, and I started to feel bad. Ain't that just like a Harvey Weinstein film to have you feeling bad for the white girl? I said,
Mm.
I'm starting to feel bad. So Ashley is my little confidant. Ashley was sharp. Ashley is a bad girl. I mean, Ashley is a fashion plate Asia. Ashley is
Mhm.
still a bad girl. Smart as a whip, intelligent, just
Mhm.
bad. Ashley is bad. She's all that. A 10, period. And so I
Mhm.
was like, Ashley, I said, Ashley, I feel bad. I said, oh my God, you think we should go over there to smooth it out with Bianca? Ashley told me off. And I'm so glad she did. Ashley said, James, are you serious? She said she told us we belong in our bottom. Why would we need to go smooth it out with her? And I said, just like that, it snapped me back into reality. That's why I thank God for Black women because
Mhm.
sometimes, and not just Black women, but friends, period, and Black people, because sometimes you may fall short. It happens to the best of us, and I'm the best of us. So when even I, like, I was like,
Mhm.
dang, I feel bad for little you know, Gwyneth Paltrow over here. I feel
Right.
bad for Rachel Lee Cook over here. I feel
Mhm.
bad for Renee Zellweger, Bridget Jones' Diary. Like, I feel bad, you know? And I was
Right.
getting ready to be like, Bianca, I forgive you if you feel away. Cause
Mhm.
she's over, real sad or whatever,
Right.
Asia. And Ashley said, are you out of your mind? This girl insulted us. Let
Mhm.
her go head on with her ugly tears. No, forget that. So I thank God for Ashley in that moment because it made me really put into perspective the fact that they will do you wrong and then make gaslight you and make you
Mhm.
feel like the stuff like you owe them.
Mhm.
Andre Leon Talley writes in Chiffon Trenches, and I have a lot in common with him because he was raised by his grandmother. I was raised by my grandmother. He dealt
Mhm.
with sexual abuse. I dealt with sexual abuse. He was mentored by older women in fashion. I was mentored by older women in fashion. It's
Mhm.
there are a lot of experiences, but I say he's a cautionary tale because we have a lot in common, but then we have a lot of other things that aren't in common where he yields on a lot of things. He's way more like Martin Luther King. I'm way more like Malcolm X.
Mhm.
Way more like Malcolm X. I
Mhm.
believe in by any means necessary, and I definitely believe in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and I believe in that unapologetically so. But in Chiffon Trenches, he talks about Pierre Berger, who was the lover and longtime manager of Yves Saint Laurent, who
Mhm.
told a lie, started a rumor that Andre Leon Talley was having sex with everybody in Paris. And that's
Mhm.
actually what got him kicked out of Paris and brought back to the United States of America. And so, and everybody wanted him because he again was the only black guy in the room. And because of his stature, people wanted it was that whole mandingo again buck breaking, and it goes back to slavery and people
Mhm.
becoming fetishizing the black male and wanting to, you know what I mean? That's why I
Right.
say you
Mhm.
can't, even in fashion, black history and post-traumatic slave disorder, they go hand in hand. But I won't go into a tangent. But
Mhm.
yes, that's my story, one of the stories. And yeah, it's one that I remember. So it's called Fashion's Black Bottom, and if you put two and two together, you can guess what brand I'm talking about. And yeah, it was a
Mhm. But
doozy.
I definitely want to, do a little bit of a flashback because, in our first
Mhm.
interview, you mentioned about, Dolce and Gabbana, and I've always, wondered about your perspective, and I did a little research on it. So I wanted to go ahead and ask, like, what is your perspective concerning, your dislike for Dolce and Gabbana?
Well, girl, you didn't discover during the research the slave sandals and the problematic Asian commercial with the model eating with the chopsticks and the
Mm.
spaghetti and girl, the noose necklace and one of the designers talking about black people and girl, you didn't read any of that, like see any of it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, yeah. Dolce and Gabbana is they've had some issues
Mm.
where race is concerned. A lot of issues. Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, the slave sandals, the mammy necklaces, the yeah. I yeah, girl. you know, and it's hard because Dolce and Gabbana is a brilliant brand and they produce such lovely garments and
Mhm.
accessories. But, there's that. But you
Mhm.
see, here's my thing, what I'm beginning to realize. Gabrielle Chanel was a Nazi.
Mhm.
Like, Gabrielle Chanel was a Nazi. Kanye West said that the Holocaust didn't happen. Like, I mean, you know, it's like, and there were black people at the Holocaust
Mhm.
as well. So, like, it's
Mhm.
like we can't, everybody says something. So it's almost like if Gabrielle Chanel was a Nazi, and that's been proven, and the house of Chanel has spoken about it and admitted to it, and their number one consumer are Jewish women, is Jewish women, then I mean, Dolce and Gabbana, like, it's almost
Mhm.
like, you know, because there's this controversy about Tommy Hilfiger as well, and how he said in the 90s, allegedly, that his clothes were not for black people, you know?
Mhm.
Um, it's
Now
kind of
with Dolce&
like,
Gabbana, I heard I didn't mean to cut you off, but with Dolce& Gabbana, I heard about from my research, like the slave, sandals and also, the Asian ad and things like that, but I didn't know, like, the other things.
yeah, yeah, girl. So it's like, child, it's like, I don't, it just continues on.
Right.
So it's almost like, but again, it's like, well, if Gabrielle Chanel was a Nazi, and she was,
Mhm.
then I just don't know how to feel about that then, because nobody's boycotting Chanel.
Mhm.
And celebrities continue to wear Dolce and Gabbana like it's going out of style. So what are we supposed to
Yeah,
do?
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's not surprising.
Nothing any of these designers do is surprising.
No.
And the reason why is because I wasn't even surprised when Gabrielle Chanel, when I found out that she was a Nazi. I wasn't
Mm.
surprised. She's French. Now, that's not to say all French people are Nazis. I don't want to get canceled, honey, down to Asia the Bird. But what I'm saying is that, like, I mean, you have to analyze the time. You have to
Right.
analyze her standing in society, and you have to understand, like, who she catered to, and her audience, and her political standpoint and perspective. We're not talking about W.E.B. Du Bois. We're talking about Gabrielle Chanel. Her politics was completely different. She didn't live in the United States. She didn't even come from the United States. No matter how much the US loved her, she was not an American citizen.
Mhm.
Dolce and Gabbana are not Americans, neither one of them, Dolce or Gabbana. So, like, does that make it right? 100% not. Absolutely not. But we must understand that they're going to do what they want to do anyway. And our community has shown that as a collective, there are no consequences to disrespecting us.
Mhm.
Now, when you disrespect other communities, endorsements get taken away. You have to pay large sums of money. You lose your career. Sometimes you go to jail. All these things happen. But when you disrespect the black community, none people go on Twitter and say things, and then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Until there are fiscal and financial consequences to disrespecting us, no one will respect us.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
scared people a little bit in 2020 when we tore up everything, when they killed George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. We
Mm-hmm.
had time because nobody had to go to work and the government was paying us two checks, not one. So we had time, but now everybody's back to work and there are no consequences to disrespecting us. So let's see what happens. That's how I feel about that.
Mm-hmm. Now I want to get into who stole the soul because hip hop has such become a worldwide phenomenon, and other cultures have appropriated black hip hop fashion styles, and these cultures have positioned themselves to profit off of hip hop fashion, but also hip hop culture in a general scale, something that Black America hasn't had the ability to do. Why do you think that is the case, and what can we do about it?
I think that in order to profit, you need to have a profit. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that a large reason as to why we have not made the most off of us is because we were not in a position of power in order to do so. So what that simply means is you need capital to raise capital. So we go to them to get capital. And until we can be in a position to go to us, for us, by us, for us,
Mm-hmm.
it won't work. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So, in other words, now we have black banks, right?
Right.
Okay. But back then, there were very few,
Mm-hmm.
if any. So, in a situation like that, um, if we are searching for a capital to build like a Sean John, who are we going to go to? But to a JP Morgan and Chase or a Citibank or a Bank of America. We're going to go or a hedge fund, like, those kinds of situations, an
Mm-hmm.
investor, an investment firm. Very few of them look like us. And so, in order to do that, we have to still go to them. So they still own a piece of the pie, at which point they still own an interest, which means that we are not 100% control. We are not in 100% control. That's why I respect Tyler Perry as much as I do. Because even though this is not hip hop and fashion, what he has is controlling interest in his product and in
Mm-hmm.
his brand. That makes him a threat. That makes him very dangerous. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? And
Right.
so where fashion is concerned, you know, a Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, LVMH, when we think about it, that's controlled by people who do not look like us. So, and that's the most powerful fashion conglomerate in the world, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, we have to look at who the major players are. And I think that in terms of why it's happened is lack of capital and lack of resources from those who are in a position to make those moves. So, in other words, during that time where hip hop was becoming a thing, which wasn't in the beginning stages, which was the late 70s and early 80s. And it was during the 90s, which was hip hop's golden era. There
Mhm.
still wasn't any of us in a power position enough to make that happen. We're just now getting to where we need to be in 2023. So that's 25 years and 30 years later.
Mhm.
So it all has to do with positions of power. It
Mhm.
has to deal with what the Locks and Little Kim said, three things: money, power, and respect. You
Mhm.
need all three. And so now we're in a situation where what we created is being owned and co opted by others. That's the
Mhm.
situation. It's not due to us giving it away, it's due to us not having it to give, essentially.
Mhm. It seems that fashion is very critical. Fashion journalism is very critical to the fashion industry. Tell us about the importance of fashion journalism, and are we able to build our own version of a Harper's Bazaar, Vogue, Mademoiselle, and many other, black owned, or are we able to create our own black owned fashion publications?
I think we are, and I think that there are several that exist. The
Mm,
Dough Online, created by Janet Inga, is one. She's a brilliant editor, fashion editor, and stylist. And that publication is based in New York. There are several uh, Black owned fashion magazines that are, that exist. But I think that, again, when you seek to create something of the magnitude of like a Condé Nast building, a structure, you must have the kind of backing and infrastructure that they have. And so, in order to do that, you must go to them in order to get that. Do I think that it's possible? 100%. But do I
mhm,
think that it will take community? Yes, it will. And
mhm,
in a situation where print is dying, is that what would that look like? So we would have to sit and think, what would that look like? What would that look like? Is it necessary now? I yesterday I went to go see Wakanda Forever for the first time. I mean, not my first time seeing Black Panther, but my first time seeing the sequel. And I
mhm,
thought about, you know, some of the comments that they made about like somebody had said, "Oh, is she using an iPhone? How primitive." And I thought our magazines, or I'm thinking to your question, are we capable of creating a Harper's, a Vogue that's for us, by us? Yeah, we're capable
mhm,
of it for sure. Is that going to be necessary? Because is Harper's necessary right now? Is
mhm,
Vogue necessary right now? Because both publications, print is struggling. So,
mhm,
what would it look like for us? Despite the stereotypes, we are the true innovators. So,
mhm,
what would our Vogue look like? Is it tangible or is it digital? We must first figure out what that looks like. So it's the same thing as reparations, right?
right.
We can't demand what reparations are until we figure out what that looks like for us. We must come together as a collective to figure out, is reparations free mortgages? Is reparations free, in erasure of student debt for all? ancestors of the transatlantic and sub-Saharan African slave trade, and transatlantic African slave trade? Is it, free mortgage for ancestors of the African slaves, or is it, just a monthly check for the rest of their life? Is it, free food and free this and free that? What does it look like? Is it a stimulus package? So in that same vein, we must figure out what fashion for us is. The same rules don't apply. So we're capable of anything. We're capable of more than we know, but we must analyze what it looks like for us.
Mhm. Yeah, right, exactly. But I definitely want to get into and switch gears about reparations regarding the fashion industry. So, reparations is defined as the making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. So, the wrongs that have been done to Black people in the fashion world are very many, financially and creatively. Now, let's just say that a few industry leaders are watching this interview, right? What would be your suggestions on how they repair the wrongs done by the fashion industry?
Well, right now, affirmative action is a hot topic in politics, like reparations is. And people are trying to uh, figure out whether or not they're needed and if they are just. And ironically, if I'm correct, the Asian community stands on the side of the fact that they are not justified and that they are unfair in a lot of cases. And so, to speak to your question, I believe that there needs to be um, affirmative action in fashion where are considered and
Mhm,
concerned. And I think hiring practices as well. I think that brands need to be forced at this point because they have not done a good job with diversity hires, specifically Black hires.
right.
Um, and I think that Beth Ann Hardison's Black Model initiatives are great for models, but we now need that with stylists as well and editors at publications. And we now need that with trainings as well. And there just need to be more opportunities, and we need them by force. So, in a nutshell, people need to be forced to hire Black people.
Mhm.
There could be a
Now, can
classier way to say that, but I'm not going to say
mhm,
it in a classier way.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you give us the James R. Sanders II 10 Black Commandments for Black people entering fashion journalism or any other facets of the fashion industry?
Ooh, child. Now, I don't know if I can give you, but I'm going to do my best. Okay? Now, listen, I don't know if I can give you 10, but I'm going to do my best. All right. So, number one, and most
Mhm,
importantly, understand that the rules for them are not the same for you.
mhm,
That is the biggest lesson that I could tell you. You are not the same. So understand that, accept that, and move on. That's number one. Number two, study your enemy, honey. Trust no one. Understand in this industry, it is absolutely cutthroat, and you are fighting with a handicap. Being Black is a beautiful struggle, but the fact that they underestimate you will lead to their downfall. Let them do so, and then when it's time to strike, snap back and attack, honey. Number three, study fashion history. Not enough
mhm,
young people do that. Know your history. It will come in handy to pull references from your mind. Be able to pull references from the 1800s, 1700s, and 1600s. And also know your own history as well. Know that you may be the only person in the room, but regardless, you created that table that you're begging for a seat at. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Number three, was that four? No, that was three. Number four, fight when you have to and be quiet when you have to. Pick your battles. Pray for discernment. It will come. Know when to be silent because silence is golden. And when you're silent, you can hear a whole lot more than when you're yelling. Number five, child, dress to impress. It is okay if you don't have a large budget, but wherever you go, keep in mind that someone is always watching. Make thrift stores and the Goodwill your best friend, child. You do not have to spend a bag on clothes. It is all in how you put it together. Number six, child. I'm doing good. Number six, I'm doing good.
Right.
Number
Yeah.
six, child. I'm surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Number
surprised
six,
too.
child, me too, girl, because I ain't prepared for this. Number six, because them 10 questions, they took me out. I said, I hope I do all right. I don't want to embarrass Asia the bird. Number six, child. Here we go, child. Number six,
All right.
get your own community of
Mhm.
Black fashion mentors outside of your job. Now, here's why you get them outside of your job because inside of your job, you don't know if they want your job, if they think you want their job, or if you can trust them to tell the people that you tell them things at your job. Get some old birds, honey, people who've been where you've been and are not threatened by you, who can advise you on what to do when you have problems and when you want to
Mhm.
slap somebody. Number seven,
All right.
always protect your neck. And what I mean by that is simply this. I'm not
Mhm.
telling you to be paranoid, okay? You should always be relaxed wherever you go, but watch what you say.
Mhm.
Always watch what you say because everybody else is watching what you say too. Life
Mhm.
and death is in the power of the tongue. Be slow to speak and quick to think. That means being light on your feet. Number eight, child, be adaptable and ready to pivot. They tell us to be able to be good at one thing and master that one thing. But rule number one was the same rules for them are not the same rules for you. That simply means, and one thing this pandemic taught us is that when the lights go out, child, we all blind. So what that simply means is keep a side hustle in your back pocket because you never
Mhm.
know when things may come around again, child, and then the lights go out again. That means keep some batteries in a flashlight, boo. Keep a side hustle, okay? Keep a side hustle, which brings me to number nine. To number eight and number nine, they kissing cousins. Start an LLC. Start an LLC because in this industry, even if you're working full time, you may still be given a freelance budget. An LLC will be your own entity. It gives you the flexibility to freelance on the side and it protects your personal assets. With an LLC, you can borrow against it when times get hard by doing trade lines and building business credit. It allows you to be smart and it also allows you to have assets separate from your personal assets. You always want to be thinking 10 steps ahead and protect yourself, which was number seven, honey, protect your neck. So, number seven, eight, and nine, they like the divine supreme mathematics, honey, okay?
Mhm.
Now, number 10, I'm doing good, child. I didn't think we was gonna make it this far. I said I give a five. Number 10, child, get my book. All right. Number 10, get my, come on, Asia. Pay me here, bird. Number 10,
Yes.
get my book because some wisdom is worth the money. And if you really want to know how prolific my pen is,
Mm-hmm.
you need to invest, honey. And it's available everywhere books are sold. There you
Mm-hmm.
have it.
All right. Now, this very one last question I definitely want to go ahead and ask as well. James Baldwin is such a courageous personality who was openly true to himself, but yet fought for the rights for people, to understand the plight of Black people. What can you tell us about the power of the James Baldwin aesthetic?
Oh my God, everything. James Baldwin, did I know you were going to ask that? I'm so excited. James Baldwin, I'm so excited. Thank you for that. Beyond. Okay,
Welcome.
where do I begin? You just opened the can of worms. I'm like flabbergasted. Okay. Um, geez. James Baldwin is like everything to me. So I have I'm like speechless. Okay. James Baldwin is literally so important to me for so many different reasons. Him, Zora Neale Hurston, Toni Morrison, and Maya Angelou are my favorite writers, period.
Mm-hmm.
James Baldwin is a master of words. I'm humbled to have his first name. Um, in 2020, I started The Baldwin, which is
Mm-hmm.
named for James Baldwin, and it is a social justice publication.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I'm the senior editor and I have a staff of 27 writers, and I manage the publication with Bianca Gregg, Will Lyons, LaCroix Francis, Kiana Butler, Olumide Onajide, Paige Wilson, several others, Mark, David, uh, another Will who just joined. Thank you. Shout outs to that team. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you all, especially Bianca, my work wife, I call her, who has been with me since the day I literally started the publication. Bianca, she's literally like my left hand. I mean seriously. But James Baldwin, and the publication is named for him because it is social justice and unapologetically so.
Mm-hmm.
The James Baldwin aesthetic is that
Right.
unapologetic social justice. It is, I don't need your permission to be Black. I don't need your permission to fight. I don't need your
Right.
permission to stand up for what I'm going to stand up for because it is what it is. And let's be very clear about that. And that's who he was and what his legacy represents. Um, his writing is timeless. His style is effortless. His swagger is limitless. His voice is iconic. I'm never going to be the kind of writer he is, but I only hope to be a fraction of the kind of writer he is. I don't think there'll ever be another James Baldwin. There'll never be another Zora
Mm-hmm.
Neale Hurston. There'll never be another Toni Morrison. There'll never be another Maya Angelou. But we can all just aspire, to
Right.
that level. And he is, for me, so important and iconic. And I'm just blessed to have discovered him. So thank you for that question because being able to talk about him makes me smile. He's just so important to me, and I don't talk about him enough. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Last but not least, where can people find you on social media and how can people support your book?
Yes, child, you better keep holding that book up. All right. So, period. All right. So, you can find me on Instagram. And I don't know if you can find me on Twitter for the time being. You can, girl. But the way things is going on Twitter, I'm getting nervous. Like, I don't know. But on Instagram and Twitter for the time being, I'm James R. Sanders, Sanders, on Instagram and Twitter. And my book, Reparations, Style and Soul, is available everywhere books are sold. Thank you, girl. That includes Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, Books a Million, Thrift Books. We have international distribution. It is available everywhere books are sold. And I can't thank you enough, Asia. Like, seriously, thank you so much. And shout outs to your dad. Like, during our first interview, he spoke to me, he encouraged me, and I really
Mhm.
appreciate him too. I could tell what you do is a family affair, and family
Right.
means a lot to me. So, shout outs to him too.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this whole discussion because it's very needed, and I really respect how very unapologetic and that's how we should be as being black, within any industry, especially in the
Hmm.
fashion industry, the beauty industry, and just all around. So thank you for this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Reparations, Style and Soul by James R. Sanders, now available on Barnes& and Noble and Amazon. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also follow me on my social media platforms and visit my website, ASIATHABIRD.com, and be on the lookout for more interviews to come very soon. Take care and stay beautiful.